Hi everybody and welcome to the first video for my video channel. So for this, what I thought I'd do is we're going to have a look at some historical vehicles. This is going to be part of a video series. The video series is going to be called Drives of the Years, or Cars of the Years, or something like that. I haven't necessarily decided on the title yet, but I'm settling on something similar to that. And we're going to be looking at some historic racing cars, historic racing circuits, where motorsport has come through, where it's going to. Well, yeah, we're going to enjoy that, I think, and look maybe at some cars that you won't have tried in various simulators. We're going to be using Automobilista today, by Riser Studios, of course. And what I've done here is I've converted a mod from R Factor, the 1937 Grand Prix season for R Factor, which is a mod that you can find on the internet. It was converted by somebody called Big Ben and Nige, who created Team Vintage, who have converted this mod to R Factor. It didn't actually say in the mod where it originally came from, but I'm assuming it might be Grand Prix Legends or something like that. I'm not sure. But that's what we're driving today. So I've obviously converted it to Automobilista. It's very easy to convert a mod from R Factor to Automobilista. If you haven't got them, look for the R Factor tools on the internet, and there's a little exe file executable that will convert mod files from R Factor into Game Stock Car Extreme, which was the predecessor to Automobilista, but they will work fine in Automobilista 2 as well. Not in Automobilista 2, but in Automobilista as well. So if you convert those, you can use them. So obviously that gives you access to an awful lot of mods, which makes Automobilista, I think, very close with Assetto Corsa, but probably the simulator that you can get the most tracks and cars in. Because of everything that's accessible. Anything that was made for Stock Car Extreme, R Factor or Automobilista will be available. So that's what we're going to look at, and we're looking at the Daimler-Benz AG. That is a Mercedes, essentially. Don't be fooled by the title. So this was the winner of the 1937 Grand Prix season at the hands of Rudolf Caracciola, a German driver. Of course, this is just before the Second World War, so yes, the car was funded by the Nazis. That's a slightly dark side to it. But of course it isn't now, so you know, these cars, those of them that are still around in museums and stuff, be worth an absolute fortune, and they are interesting. They're interesting cars. Certainly German engineering was still very, very good in those days, as it is today. So we're going to be looking at that, and we're going to be looking at the Brooklands circuit. So I'm going to get out there driving, and we'll have a quick look around this circuit. So as you can see, the fuel usage in these cars is quite interesting. So the Brooklands circuit is only 2.75 miles, but despite that, apparently, to do 9 laps of the track, I need to have 125 litres on board, which, you know, just goes to show how significant the fuel usage is on these cars. So I'm going to drive round, we'll have a look at this. We'll probably do a race in a little bit as well with some other cars. I haven't actually tried that, so I don't know how good it's going to be, and how good the AI are going to be. It may result in a crash fest, but at least that'll be entertaining, so let's give it a go. It's an interesting looking car. It runs on Continental tyres, and we're back now to give this a go, and my steering wheel is now working, which is excellent. I of course started this video expecting that I was going to look all professional, and then within the first few seconds that's all gone to pot, but never mind, we're out now. So yes, this is Brooklands. Now I had to edit a couple of the files. You'll notice as well that there's a slight haze coming off the front wheels. That's because Brooklands is made of concrete, so the concrete dust comes off the track as you go along, and that is realistic. I've checked. If you watch some of the old videos from Brooklands, of which there aren't many, but there are a couple, usually for Pathé News, it does have that effect on the car. Doing 223 kilometers an hour. The first thing you notice is because of the narrow tyres at the front, it really does move around, this car, a lot. I suggest you don't watch this video if you're epileptic. Oh, Oh wow, hard to handle these things. And yes, as you can see, the edge of the track, although Brooklands has been made for this game reasonably okay, I am going to turn the force feedback down because at the moment with this car it's taking my arms off. So let's just turn that down a tad. So then, Brooklands, a background. What were the reasons for building the circuit? Well, of course, motor racing in the early days was usually run on public roads. It had been since 1894 when the first race took place, the Paris-Rouen. And that had always been the case up until this circuit was built. But in 1903, the Gordon Bennett Cup, which at the time was the most prestigious motor racing competition, had a rule. The Gordon Bennett Cup was always a case of whoever won the event would then host it the following year, because the Gordon Bennett Cup was basically nations competing against each other. Their companies of that particular nation would build a car for them, and then they would go and race, and they would compete a little bit like the Olympics and see which country won. And in 1902, Britain won that event, but there was a problem. In 1903, the government were introducing the Motor Act, and that Motor Act would mean that on public roads it would only be possible to go 20 miles an hour, no faster. And the issue with that, of course, is that that meant that they wouldn't be able to race on public roads because motor racing was not exempt. I'm just going to pause for a second here because there is a slight bump at this part of the track. That's really quite bumpy. I had tried going over this in a kart extreme car the other day and it just took off over that. So that was the reason, and because they couldn't race on public roads, they had to come up with a solution. Now, the solution in 1903 was that at the time, Ireland was not an independent country just across the Irish Sea. It was still the whole island part of the UK, and as a result of that, for some strange reason, this Motor Racing Act, this Motor Act didn't apply to Ireland. As a result of that, they offered to host the Gordon Bennett Cup, and in 1903 that's where it was held, on a circuit called Athy, which is a public road circuit about 75 kilometres west of Dublin. But racing drivers decided in Britain they didn't really want this embarrassment again. So an entrepreneur by the name of... hang on a second. And we've knocked the front left wheel off there. That's a good start, isn't it? Very, very difficult to drive these cars. I don't recommend it if if you're of a soft disposition. For some reason, apparently the front left is 0.2 below the ground. Not sure that's possible, but okay. So yes, so an entrepreneur called Hugh Fortescue Lock King came up with a solution. He decided that it would be a good idea for them to have a purpose-built racing circuit, much so that people could come in and watch motor racing on a more regular basis. He was an entrepreneur, so he could see money in this, obviously, and he owned an estate in Surrey near Weybridge called Brooklands. And as a result, he decided that he was going to build a racing circuit on his land. But fortunately, as an entrepreneur, unlike a lot of modern entrepreneurs who get involved in sports, he knew that he wasn't an expert in this, and so he consulted racing drivers to decide on how to go about it. One racing driver, Charles Jarrett, said that it should be a very quick circuit. But in order to make the circuit high speed but also safe, they decided that it should be highly banked. That meant that the cars would stay on the circuit, hopefully not fly off it, although as we've already seen, I already have done, so it's not foolproof by any stretch of the imagination. And by doing that, that would prevent the cars from going off the circuit. It would be safer in inverted commas, and as a result they'd be able to do it that way. It also of course meant that with a highly banked circuit, the viewing public would be able to see further around the course, so it was a double bonus in that respect. So that was Charles Jarrett's suggestion. There was also another racing driver he consulted with called Selwyn Edge. Now Selwyn Edge as well as being a racing driver, was also an agent for Napier cars and advertising them, getting them sold. And he wanted to have good advertisement for the cars. So he figured that it would also be a good idea to allow them to be as visible as possible for as long as possible. Now, the high banking helped with that, but the other thing, of course, that helps with that is if the circuit's not too long. So although it's 2.75 kilometers, you've got to remember that up to this point, a lot of public road events had been much bigger than that. It was decided that oval would be the best solution to this, and as you can see from the map there in the top right, Brooklands is not a complete oval. There is a slight difference in it. There are two variants of the oval. There's this outer circuit, which is the one that looks a bit like a kidney bean, and there's another one that's almost like a triangular circuit, a little bit like Pocono, I suppose, in America. And that was what they decided on. So Selwyn Edge got his request. It took 9 months to build this circuit, which is quite remarkable when you think about it, especially when you consider how long it takes to build circuits nowadays. I mean, it's usually years, isn't it? So it's amazing that with the technology they had in those days, they were able to build this in 9 months. And yes, I know it's basic, but we do have a lot more technology nowadays. There was a problem though. When they built the circuit and they planned on the design and how long it would be, where it would go, what the direction would be, there was a slight issue in that there was a river in the way, called the Riverway. So they had to re-divert the river in order to build the circuit, which is quite a remarkable feat if you think about it. It's not easy to divert a river. And so that's what they did. The circuit took 9 months to build. It was made, people were rehoused, they built new houses for them, they didn't just shove them out with a compulsory purchase order, they rebuilt the houses for them. And 267.5 million litres of earth were moved in order to make this track, and 200,000 tonnes of gravel and cement were brought in for the construction of the concrete surface. Speed record attempts were done here for many years, and in fact the record was set in 1937, and I think it was 1937, and actually stayed in place from John Cobb till the 60s. And again, we're off in the same place. It's over that bump. Definitely going to have to work on the tyre pressures with this car, I think, in offence. Of course, it would have been more of a problem if the racing drivers had gone off in the days when they were driving this, because if you went off in their day, that was it. I'm just going to harden the suspension a little bit, so hopefully... No, actually, I want to soften it, don't I? I don't want to harden it. It's as soft as it will go. Okay. Let's have the anti-roll bar on as well. So it was finally opened in 1907, and as such was the world's first purpose-built racing circuit, which is why it's particularly interesting to us in this series. World's first purpose-built racing circuit. Yes, it predated Indianapolis by 2 years. Right, I think I've actually made the car worse there. Yeah. Fortunately, as you can see, when you hit the trees, you just go through them on this circuit. Okay, so what did I do? Well, I changed the tyre pressures, didn't I? Let's beef them up again. I don't think I'm going to be able to make this thing easy to drive, to be honest. I think it's going to be a case of me getting used to it. Anyway, the circuit last hosted a race in 1939. And unfortunately, if you go to Brooklands today, you won't be able to find the full circuit. Some of it still remains, but it's very vastly overgrown. It's not any longer there. But one thing that is there on part of the circuit on the estate is the Brooklands Museum. So if you're interested in such things, I'll put a link in the video description. and if you're thinking of visiting it, it's well worth the visit. So I'll put a link down there for you. So we're just going to drive this car round for, I'm going to try and complete a lap, and then hopefully we might get to actually do a race round here, although I suspect that that's going to be a crash fest, but we'll give it a go. I'm feathering the throttle because I've realised that this car, I'm not going to be able to drive it flat out around this circuit. I feel better if I can just get the thing round. I want to complete a lap before I start a race. I have to say though, I do love driving cars like this. I love driving old things. They're interesting. They're not like modern cars. It's like a completely new experience. And I always like that because, let's face it, in the majority of cases, modern cars are often quite similar. I mean, you have your different classes, so obviously open-wheelers don't handle anything like GTs. But a lot of GT cars drive in a pretty similar way. A lot of open-wheelers drive in a pretty similar way. There's little nuances to each car, and often the setups are what make them different. But it's nice to drive things like this with so much character. You can see there's part of this track that hasn't been built 100% well because there was something growing out of the cement, although that may be accurate, who knows. It certainly is now. So 2.7 miles. I don't think we're going to cover this that fast, but we'll try and see what we're going to do. I think we're going to be around the 1 minute mark here. In a 1937 car, trust me, that's more than fast enough. 1 minute 3.4, there we go. Nearly lost control there. We'll hold the slide, really having to push the wheel here. Oh. And, yes, big accident.
Yellow flag.
It's not hard to see why so many people were killed back in these days, is it? Not that I'm anywhere near as skilled a driver, but even so. I do love, if you look at the replay, I love this, the concrete dust coming up off the back. I'm a little annoyed about it coming off the front wheels as well, I'll be honest. I mean, I know that's realistic, but it can be a little bit irritating when you're driving along, but I like seeing it come off the back. And somebody actually proved in Automobilista recently as well that when you get that, when you get the smoke from the engine, or you get concrete dust in this sense, you can actually see the aero wash over the cars as well. Nobody realised that Automobilista was quite as graphically realistic as that, did they? But it is. So the R-Factor game engine actually is still produces some pretty amazing stuff on occasion and still surprises you. So yeah, so that's the circuit. We've given a little brief history lesson there. Boring bit is over. If you're bored by that kind of thing. I know a lot of people aren't. A lot of people are interested. So we're going to do a single race now. And we're going to use the Vanderbilt Cup liveries because there's some interesting liveries in here. So we're at the Daimler-Benz AG. And let's have a look through some of these skins. Let's see what we've got. Wilbur Shaw, black and yellow. Interesting. So Riley Rolt. Team Mercedes AMG, that sounds familiar. Oh, they've done it in the modern colours, that's why. I'm pretty sure that's a fake one. Italian Mercedes. Some of these would have been real from the Vanderbilt Cup of that era. That's quite nice. What's that? There's Floyd Roberts. Dark blue. Quite like that. So we're going to go on the outer circuit. I'm going to turn practice off and I'm going to turn qualifying off. We're just going to go for a race. Start position random, that's fine. Let's not do race time, let's do laps. We'll do 5 laps. No, we'll do 10. We'll do 10 laps. Hang on, how long did the fuel tank go? I think it was 10 laps, isn't it? I think we'll be alright. I'll put 13 other drivers on, we'll have a 14 driver grid. So yeah, so here you can see Brooklands is 30 kilometres southwest of London. It's 2.767 miles. We're going to drive this FHR Motorsports car and let's see how we go. They've actually got the land speed record there, an average by John Cobb in the Napier Railton of 143.451 miles per hour. And the banking, yeah, they do that banking. They're nearly 30 feet high in some places. You actually think about that. That is an astonishing amount, isn't it? Right, so we're actually starting on pole position. That will probably change. We've got a couple of Daimlers, got some Auto Unions, Maseratis. So the Maseratis are from the lower class. They're from the Voiturette class, so they're probably not going to keep up, although they may keep up with me. The Alfa Romeos, yeah. So we've got a bit of everything in there. We've got the Auto Unions as well. Auto Union was actually a merger of a number of different companies. It was a merger of the Audi company, Horsch, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, DKW and Wanderer. They were 4 German companies who were struggling at the time and so formed a conglomerate. Amazing to think that Audi was once a struggling company, isn't it, when you look at them, how big it is nowadays. But there you go. Right. Oh, that's not good, is it? Okay, we're going to restart that. I'm assuming that's because it was a rolling start and they just started straight away. So let's change the rolling start. Let's do a standing start, and hopefully that will make it a little bit better. So this is going to be interesting. I quite fancy, I'd have to really learn how to drive these cars, but I'd love to do some online sim racing with these things. It's whether there'd be enough people interested though. If you are interested, tell me, drop a line. We'll have a look and see if we can organise something on onlinesimracing.net. Maybe we can do a few of the old tracks, Brooklands. There was a few other circuits. Obviously there's the old Spa that was ran at back in the day as well in the 1937 season. And we've got a couple of other Voiturettes now. We've got some ERAs in there as well. Okay, David Brown Racing. That's interesting. I wonder if that's connected to the David Brown who bought Aston Martin. I don't actually know. I didn't research that, so sorry. Right then. You'll notice that the grid at Brooklands is set in 4x4, not 2x2. That's how they did things back in the day, and they did it in the very early stages of the Formula 1 Championship as well, actually. Oh, that's a good start. Unfortunately, he's not hit me that hard. I think we're okay. Let's restart that race. We can cut that. So for some unusual reason, the start line is in the pit lane, essentially. Really struggling to get this thing off the line with the cold tyres. Oh, there's been a big crash. Oh, that's not good, is it? Yeah, I bet there is. So we've had about 6 take each other out on the first corner, but there are some streaking ahead. You can see the concrete dust off the back of the cars ahead. You can't actually see the cars, you can only see the concrete dust. It appears that the concrete dust has a higher draw distance. So that's a shame, but never mind. Right, we're driving the car around now. Let's see if we can catch these guys. We are actually catching them. So interestingly, the AI are not going any faster than me on this particular section of the circuit. So obviously this is as fast as you can go. If you try to go faster, you just lose control of the car. Closing down, we're 8.5 seconds behind the leader at the moment. Over the bump. Oh! Feel that through my wheel when that happens. So we're catching. Oh, there's a caution, and some of those cars are still spun out at the start. They haven't corrected themselves. We're up to 5th though. Don't think I should have really overtaken there. I'm pretty sure they didn't have overtaking under yellow flags in 1937. That's my excuse. Mr. Horn is a long way ahead. Look at him go, 7.6 seconds up the road. We're about to come up on Raymond Sommer, which is actually a driver I've actually heard of in this race. He actually competed in the early Formula 1 races when it started in 1950, so we're up to second now. We've got to try and close down on Mr. Horn. We've got 7 laps to do so. I don't know if it's Horn or Horner, it depends on, because obviously it does shorten the names somewhat in Automobilist a lot of the time. They probably should have had the AI difficulty a little bit higher, but anyway. There's 9 cars still in the race, we've got 5 out. It is all about patience, this car, I'm learning now that I'm actually driving it in a race. Don't drive it flat out, because if you drive it flat out, you'll just spin out. You need to be more sensible, more refined in the way you drive it. You do that, and of course, now that I've said that, I'll almost certainly spin out before the end of this race. We're now 3.5 seconds behind. We've got another 6 laps to go. We're about to go on to lap 4. I can see him. Oh, nearly lost it there. Using 5 litres a lap. What we do, we're only doing 248 kilometres an hour. Fuel usage back in these days wasn't pretty much non-existent. I don't think they even thought about it. It was just a case of if we need to use the fuel, we need to use it. I love the wooden steering wheel as well. And the dials on the dashboard. I don't know if you can even call it a dashboard, can you? But yeah, they're great. It's great to see all those needles. It's almost like being in a submarine, actually, when you see all those needles on the dashboard. Fascinating driving cars from this era. Look at the wing mirrors as well. They're very strange things, aren't they? I think the only wing mirrors on a modern car I've seen like that, I think a Volkswagen Beta. I might be wrong, but I think that has circular wing mirrors.
Yellow flag.
Yellow flag again. We've had another spinner. Oh, he's gone off into the trees. Let's hope he's alright, Mr. Couts. And we're taking the lead. He's coming back at me. He's back in front. Look at him go. He's giving me a run for my money here. Look at that. Look at the speed he's carrying. Well, I'm not risking that. I think he'll probably slow down at some point. We're coming up on some back markers, so that might be an opportunity for me. And I've got him now. He's having to slow down. He can see the back markers in front of him. Let's see if we can get past them quickly. That'll put something between us and him. Oh, nearly lost it again. Don't lose it now. Going on to lap 6. 4.8 litres used that time around. I think that the game has grossly overestimated the amount of fuel that you need to complete 10 laps. Of course, the reason for that is it may well be that you would use that kind of fuel if you were going flat out, but I'm probably only doing, well, I can see actually in the bottom right, I'm only doing about 66% throttle, because any more than that I'll just spin out. So that's probably the reason why we're using less fuel. Only 4 gears in these cars. That was I think that's fairly normal back in the day. I think I can't remember if it was my dad or, I think it was my dad. My dad told me that his first car had 4 gears, not 5, in forward. Under the bridge. We're on now. We've got 4 laps to go. So we're well over halfway through this race. We're 3 seconds ahead. I'm hoping we're going to see some other drivers though, because it is getting a little boring. I maybe should have made the grid a bit bigger. Although that really would have been chaos at the start if I'd have done that. Arms are actually starting to ache a little bit now. It's amazing how much concentration and how much turning of the wheel you have to do. They must have been absolute... I mean, if you think about it as well, because the forces in the real car, I've no doubt, were considerably more than they are in this. So I can only imagine they must have been built like horses, these men, back in those days, to drive these things. Especially around tracks like this. Not setting fastest laps, I'm trying to resist the urge to do that. Although we might go for it on the last couple of laps, just because if I crash out it's not a big issue, is it? We are actually just ahead of our delta. Oh, yellow flag, somebody else has gone off into the trees. It's Raymond Sommer. Nearly lost it again there. 2 laps to go this time by. Just done a 58.5. We may catch 8th place before the end of the race. Barbieri. I think once you go above 280 kilometers an hour, to be honest, the car really starts to wobble. And it's not easy to keep it under control when you do that, so it's probably best if I don't.
Yellow flag.
Yellow flag, oh, that's Raymond Sommer still off in the trees, probably trying to find his way back onto the circuit. Caught Mr. Barbieri. Oh! 1 lap to go. I feel like in this day and age you should wave as you go past. But I'm far too concentrated on keeping this thing under control. It's a monster, this thing. It's great fun, but it's not easy. We're just passing. He's now 2 laps behind us, probably driving the Void Tourette's, I'm guessing.
The caution flag is out.
And we're going to come across, hopefully, if we can get over this bump, to win. There we go.
Second flag.
Albeit only with the AI at about 95%, so I recognise that that's not the biggest achievement in the world, but I'm happy with it. So we'll drive around now, we'll come back to the pits, but that's given you a little insight into the track of Brooklands. And there is, it's a wonderful version of this track. I'll post the links and the necessary credits to those who made it in the description below. And also I'll probably post, interestingly, there's another link to a imagined version of Brooklands as it would be in the modern era, a 2003 version, which could be used for IndyCar races, I suppose, and things like that. And that's I'll probably post that in the description below as well. That has nothing to do with this particular version of the track, but it is an interesting project that was also made, and I don't want to spin out by going over the grass, so we're going to bring it back to the pits, which is a bunch of sheds. I realise I'm not down to speed limit at all there, but never mind. Excellent. Well, that was good fun. So we finished 12.5 seconds ahead in the end. Sweating a bit, I must be honest. Very difficult to keep a hand on that, but it was really good fun, and these cars are great to drive. So if you want to download this mod, I'll also put that in the mod description below. The post will be to the R-Factor version, but if you have a quick Google, you can find out fairly easily how to convert the R-Factor mod to Stock Car Extreme or Automobilista, whichever of the games that you want to use. And please also subscribe to my YouTube channel. I will also be putting up a link very shortly to my Twitch channel, which will be streaming some live racing at some point. And if you want to subscribe to that, please do that as well. And yeah, thanks very much for watching.